Well, I think I'm a little more excited than I have been in some of my blogs. And when I watched a few of my own blogs, I seemed a bit boring. I must be getting old. But I've just come back from Lagos Hope, really the most outstanding weekend I can think of in the last couple of years. Of course, many times we've been locked down, though I've had many wonderful weekends recently also in Berlin. But I hope you get to watch the short blog I did on the bridge of the ship just a few days ago there in Las Palmas. I also had the privilege, though originally we didn't think it was possible, I had the privilege of sailing that short distance, and I haven't sailed on the ship in a couple of years. Keep in mind, I've been involved with the ship since 2004, and I really needed to get back. And my ship battery really got charged up, and I'm really on the warpath, forgive the term, to find recruits. How amazing, 100 empty beds on the ship right now. You know what they would be worth, huh? In a modern hotel. And I'm just amazed that we don't have a queue, a lineup, a waiting list of people wanting to get on the ship. But I think it's because many young people don't know about it and they don't understand that this is a 1 year life changing educational experience, spiritual growth experience, exposure experience that will just be so valuable for them, whatever career. Do you think the great universities of the world can match what we can give a person on that ship going from nation to nation? It was great to meet people from so many different nations, especially a woman from Serbia, a dear brother from Cameroon. And so pray with us and spread the word that the door is open and there's now $1,000 euro or pound scholarship for anyone joining the year program in the coming months. I think you all, at one time or the other, have seen a picture of the Lagos Hope. We've had 4 ships, but there it is. I don't think it's world's greatest photograph, but I hope you yourself get a chance to visit the ship. I'm going back to the ship very soon in Sevilla. Another thing that's been very much on my heart is what used to be called gospel recordings, founded by one of the most dynamic women I've ever met, Joy Ritterhoff, who's been with the Lord a long time. And that movement spread all over the world, and then it became sort of a network, a global recording network. And in an amazing way, they have some messages, some teaching from the Word of God in 6,300 languages. I thought it would be good for you to at least take a look at their website and maybe pass it on to people who especially may know some of the languages that are not so popular. Just amazing. When we first went to Mexico, we played gospel recordings over a loudspeaker in Spanish from our little van. I remember it so well, and how the people would gather around. Of course, now they have the digital way of spreading the message, and you ought to really check it out. Today is part 2 of this challenge and the joys of the senior years. It's all available on this brochure. We'd love to send you some extra copies. I think it's in French and German. As I said last week, excuse me, this is a tougher part 2 of the message, because it's the challenges, often tough challenges, that face us in our senior years. If we get to my age, over 80, or even years before that, we first of all should just thank the Lord that we're even alive. So many people go on and pass on, hopefully go to heaven at much younger age. And one of the toughest things in OM history are losing people who are under 40 years of age, especially in vehicle accidents. Considering 250,000 XOMers, I just feel we've been very fortunate. But each one of those accidents, I knew the people personally, is still very big. in my thinking. But we have to face the challenge. We're still here. And some of us, of course, are facing health challenges. The first challenge, and there's 7 of them, is the challenge of loss of memory. I've experienced that in a very unusual way. 90% of everything in my life, as far as I can see, I've forgotten. But 10%, for such a long life, I have more than enough to keep me entertained. And I keep dreaming about different things. Last night, Billy Graham and Franklin Graham were both in my dream. Of course, Billy Graham's in heaven. So I can't remember people's names. If I work at it, if I get an email and I look at the name again and again and have their face, I am getting some victories. But it's a real struggle. Of course, other people have dementia, other people have Alzheimer's. I just was talking to a brother who visited someone with Alzheimer's. He spoke on our Zoom prayer meeting yesterday, and what an experience that was. We have to thank the Lord for what we have, and if we somehow develop Alzheimer's, people around us need to celebrate the life that we lived, not over focus on the Alzheimer's or the illness. Keep in mind, Alzheimer's people, great variety of them, but many of them will enjoy talking with you even if they don't know who you are. So even if they don't know who you are, it doesn't matter. The visit isn't about you. The visit is about blessing them. So let's not neglect people who are in that category. The second challenge of the senior years, of course, is the challenge of grief. Even today, I've had word of another friend who's gone home to be with Jesus. I've just come from the funeral of dear Hans Strom up there in Sweden. And we're human, no matter how spiritual we are, we feel deep grief. At the same time as God's people who have that relationship with Jesus, in whom is all the fullness of the Godhead bodily, in whom are all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge, we have the reality described so powerfully in many passages of the New Testament about the all-sufficiency of Jesus. His grace is sufficient, his strength is made perfect in weakness. And I hope that you're learning to handle grief. And if you're grieving over the loss of your life partner, remember, your life partner, more than anything else, if he could call you on the phone, would tell you, get on with your life. God still wants to use you. We've had all these years together. Now you're on your own. Go for it. Lay treasure in heaven. Don't over-focus on yourself or on your grief, and don't be surprised if it keeps coming back again and again. And then the third challenge is the challenge of illness, which I've just touched on. But of course, I'm amazed at the wide range of different illnesses. My loving, wonderful wife has 9 different illnesses, many of them, a number of them, not affecting her much on her daily basis, and she's still full-time in the office and all kinds of other activities, not as mobile as she used to be. And many of you probably have a similar story. I just remind you, there's no retirement program for kingdom people. There's a major program for slowing down. There's even a program if somehow you're still in bed. And we know of people who have ministered while they were still in bed, especially if you have a telephone and modern technology like WhatsApp. Of course, if I ever lost the use of my fingers and spend maybe 8 or 9 hours a day on a laptop, that would be a huge setback. But now there's voice recognition. We live in amazing days for communication. So even though many times we don't feel like it, I had to make an important phone call last night, and I certainly didn't feel like it. But somehow I just pushed myself, and I know that phone call was very, very important to that person. I had another phone call this morning from a brother just devastated. I hope you've watched my blog, The Slippery Slope of Extremism. He was devastated because he did something that disturbed a leader in the church, and the leader took him aside and accused him of having a demon. It just blew him away. And I saw the Lord this morning on the phone put him back together, as I just assured him that was pure folly. And I've seen 65 years of it. I think of another younger brother who was on OM, one of the saddest stories in OM. He's not feeling well. He was way out in Asia. And somehow he went for counseling, and they said, you probably have a demon, and they wanted to lay hands on him. It just hurt him so deeply. It took him years to recover, though somehow he kept functioning. And I just warn you against extremism, especially down some of these areas that I've just touched on. Maybe it fits in because sometimes we have an illness, and the greatest problem is people that have a quick fix. And then even people that get a prophecy, you're going to be healed. How many prophecies like that have never been fulfilled? But we're not told about those. We're told about the one where somehow the prophecy seemed to be fulfilled. Beware of most of this personal prophecy. And of course, God heals. But as we get older, we have to be ready to die. And dying is often a process. We need to embrace that. I don't want it any more than you, but I think it's very, very important. And also, it can cause us to draw closer to the Lord. I'm singing more hymns. I'm drawing closer to the Lord in certain ways in the midst of the battle. And then the fourth challenge is the challenge of pain. That sort of goes even beyond illness. And many times when I'm talking to someone who's ill, I ask them how they're feeling. And if they're pain-free, I say, you are very, very fortunate. But it's not always that way. And whenever I've visited someone suffering from pain, and I've had people with long-term pain, it just really broke me. It really spoke to me. How can they handle that? The little pain I've had in my life, and I thank the Lord that I have had some, I have found quite a challenge. So rather than thinking it can never happen, we can prepare and determine we're going to somehow be strong in God, but we're also going to have wisdom. There's tremendous medication that we have today. We hear these horror stories, especially through fake news network, about this medication and what it did. As I said in one of my books, you can prove anything from horror stories, but it's not often the big picture. The big picture is that medication has helped a lot of people, including these amazing painkillers that say sometimes have to give during the final weeks of a person's life. And then the fifth challenge of the senior years really isn't new to seniors. It's the challenge of disappointment. Disappointment can be God's appointment, but oftentimes at the time we don't feel it, we don't recognize it. But I'd urge you to be ready for some disappointments, and maybe with your grandchildren, and maybe with a next door neighbor. There's so many different ways, especially those of us who pray. We, as we get older, realize those prayers have not been answered, and a wave of disappointment can roll over us and be very difficult. Grab those verses I keep talking to you about, those last few verses of Romans 11. And then the sixth challenge, of course, is the challenge of sin. We don't stop sinning because we are older. And I don't have time to go into details, but my struggle with just wanting to look at a beautiful naked woman, I think are going to go on the rest of my life. I have a very high level of victory, but I don't trust myself. And when I hear of some of these older people falling into immorality, it just shakes me. And all my life I've prayed, Lord, keep me faithful to you above all else, and to my wife. I also struggle so often with impatience. Everything seems to be going too slow. And yet I know one of the greatest needs in my life is actually to slow down. And then finally, the challenge of misunderstandings. Let's be real. It's not possible to live on this planet, to have friends, to have meetings, to be involved with the church and not have misunderstandings. My wife and I seem to have one almost every day over often very little things. Today it was me spilling the orange juice that I thought I'd cleaned up, but she can spot any stickiness on her kitchen counter, which is sort of the holy grail. And so I was in trouble. Well, we live with the reality of misunderstandings. We keep forgiving. We keep, if we're believers, praying together. And we keep rejoicing. The word is clear. Rejoice evermore. Pray without ceasing. So there's just 7 challenges of the senior years. I'm sure you could add to it. Feel free to send you my list. And of course, I think all of you by now have my email. God bless you. Look forward to hearing from you. Keep on keeping on.